Welcome to the Mature Masculinity Podcast. Today, I'm recording it at 6:23 in the evening on September 1st. I want to talk about a very personal subject for me. And it's a subject that I think is relevant to a lot of men, if not all men. But it's one that's not really talked about. And this is around men's image, self-image, and the standard that they are held to in terms of their appearance. It's relevant on a lot of different levels. It's something I've been thinking about and working through most of my life. I've been, as a man, I've had to deal with some very interesting realizations around my own body image and how I feel about my body. There have been times that I have really struggled with my appearance and the way that I look, the way that I feel about my body. I don't as much anymore. But even now, there are times where I do. As some people might note, recently I got my hair shaved off for all intents and purposes on the top of my head, and one of the reasons why was because my hair was thinning out on top, and I was kind of like, at some point I'd kind of come to the realization of I'm probably just going to go ahead and shave this pretty soon, because I don't know that I knew that at some point, as my hair was starting to bald more, and my head was starting to bald more, that I would probably do that. And I like it. I like the look. I think I look really good with, kind of the new look that I've gone with. But it's just an interesting realization that I've had around why I chose that. And, another reason that I chose it was because I had my hair shaved because I was marking a point of transition in my life, a point of release, both in regards to leaving my job and stepping into a new adventure, and in regards to transitioning from the relationship that I left earlier this year. It's been really present with the awareness that my life is changing in a lot of different ways. And I feel like it's a good change overall. But I look then at my body image, and I think about that and the experiences that I've had with my body over the years. And the experience that I see a lot of men, that I think a lot of men have around their bodies. I'm not muscular enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not ripped enough. I'm not handsome enough. These are things that I have heard men express. These are things that I've occasionally expressed. It's interesting because I was reading a book recently, and it was actually Man Enough by Justin Baldoni, and he made the point that men, up until I'd probably say the 1980s, probably didn't really worry about their appearance. I don't know if I agree with him on that one or not, but I don't know. I'd have to talk to an older man and find out. But I do remember my dad doing a lot to try and stay in shape and to look a certain way. And he was born in 1940. So I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think that if anything, I think it was just more subtle than what we would see with women. And obviously with women, they have their own experiences and could speak to this and say, well, this is what our experience is around this. And for people who identify as other genders, they could also speak to their own experiences. But I'm speaking to this experience as a man. And that's the experience I want to speak to, because that's the one I know. And I want to tell you my story. So when I was a teenager, I remember growing up and not always eating food, sometimes because I felt I felt worried. I remember my mom one time telling me that I was too fat. And that really struck a nerve with me. I also remember sometimes being punished by my stepmom and not given food. With my mom, it was kind of like when she said that, it made me feel self-conscious about my body. And she would make these comments in my 20s and my 30s, not really anymore. I've kind of corrected her about that and said, like that's not really something that you need to be commenting on. But it took me a long time. And in my 20s, I went through a period of time where I was only eating one meal a day. And part of it was a pressure that I put on myself to be as thin as possible. Here I was, a 6'3" man. I probably weighed around 170 pounds. Way too thin. You could see my collarbones, everything else, but I was worried that if I ate more food, that wouldn't be a good thing. And also part of it was, at the time, I wasn't making a lot of money. And I was living in a situation where I had roommates stealing food from me. So that made it hard too. Eventually I got out of that situation. And I remember going to graduate school for my master's, and I was living on campus, and suddenly it was an all-you-can-eat buffet, and I loaded up on food, and I got a lot. I gained a lot of weight, and I remember my mom saying at one point, "Oh, you've gotten really chunky." And I remembered feeling awkward and uncomfortable about that. I eventually lost the weight at some point, and in my 40s, I remember in my early 40s, a few years ago, mid 40s, I guess, I got divorced, and one of the things that I did is I started dashing. When you work as a door dasher, you're going to be getting out of your car a lot and walking a lot. People think you're just driving around delivering, but you're doing a lot of walking. And I remember feeling so proud of myself because I was thinner than I had ever been for a long, long time. It was like I felt like I had to be just as thin as possible, because if I gained too much weight, that would be a problem. I remember my most recent girlfriend telling me not to get fat and trying to tell me what to eat, because she didn't want me to look a certain way. She wanted me to look in a way that felt complimentary toward her and would make her stand out and be more attractive when she was seen with me, which in retrospect seems pretty messed up when I think about it. So I've had all these experiences even up until recently where in one form or another I've been told that my body isn't isn't good enough, and that I need to look a certain way, be a certain way, in order to do that. And I think that is probably one of the most toxic messages that we can get. It's also one of the most toxic messages that we can put out there. I think whether it's a man or a woman, it's ultimately or an other identified gender. It's really important to determine for ourselves like what it means to take care of ourselves, and one of those things means taking care of our bodies in a healthy way. For me, I didn't really feel like I could do that. I felt like I had to I had to conform to someone else's expectations around how I appeared. And it's interesting because some of this even applies to clothing. I was, in the last couple people that I dated, I had one person who hated the black leather hat that I wore and hated the feather in it. Thought it didn't look good. And what did I do? I codependently went along with what that person said. And then with the person I was most recently with, there were a couple different shirts that she didn't like me wearing because they were too bright, too colorful. And again, don't get me wrong, sometimes there's some validity in making compromises around certain things. But it stood out to me that in a very real sense, I was being told, like, the way you are is problematic for me. I want you to appear a certain way. I want your body to look a certain way. I want you to fit my idea as to who you should be. And I think that when we get those kinds of messages, regardless of how we identify, it can be very damaging. And one of the most important things that we can do as an act of self-care is to figure out, like, how do I want to show up for myself? What does it mean to take care of me? Now, for me, when I look at that question, I kind of look at it from the perspective of each day, I'm taking care of myself. I'm eating healthy. I start my day with some yogurt, strawberries, cacao nibs, and walnuts and granola. And that's my breakfast. And then later on, I usually have a salad or a vegetable melange, and then I have a dinner of some sorts. Sometimes with meat, sometimes not. And, beyond that, I think in terms of self-care, one of the things that I've really been exploring in this last year is, like, what does it mean to take good care of myself? One of the classes that I was taking is a course through infinite devotion, and the second step is all about I take care of myself. And what did that really mean? Well, for me, that meant going up to the store and getting an antifungal foot thing for one of my toes, because the nail on it clearly had a fungus, and starting to apply that to myself. I did that of my own volition. No one forced me to do it. No one said, it was just, I was kind of like aware. I'm like, this is a problem. I need to take better care of my toe, and I hadn't been. For me, it meant stretching each day, and getting up and exercising, going for walks throughout the day, doing kung fu at night, in qigong. It meant taking better care of myself because I realized I deserved to take care of myself, regardless of what anyone else thought or didn't think. I was like, I deserve this for myself. I owe it to myself. And I think really that's a huge and important aspect of self-care, like that men oftentimes neglect. I've seen my share of men over the years who, they don't necessarily take a lot of pride in how they dress or appear. They don't necessarily think about, like, taking care of their physical appearance as much as they could. And this isn't about being more attractive to somebody else. This is about, I'm taking care of myself because I value myself enough that I want to take care of myself. It's taking care of myself because I'm choosing to give to myself the benefit of self-care. I love myself enough to take care of myself. I value myself enough to take care of myself. I respect myself enough to take care of myself. So I'm eating healthier. I'm exercising. I'm doing all these things, but I'm not doing it to please someone else. And I think that's really the important thing, is, like, I am taking care of myself not to please someone else. I am taking care of myself to please myself, to take care of me, to give myself the best kind of health I can give. And when we learn how to do that, it can be very transformative. Like, oh, I have value. Oh, I deserve to take care of myself. Oh, I can love myself enough to do these things that I need to do. So I'm going to urge you to take better care of yourself, to love yourself, to value yourself, to choose yourself. Because it's really easy not to do that. It's really easy to give away our sense of value. And speaking as someone who at one time struggled with an eating disorder, at one time, was starving myself, and had to learn how to love my body and to love myself as I am. And I'm still learning this, even now, and I'm 47 years old at the time of this recording. I just think it's so important that we give ourselves that value. We say, I value myself enough to know that I am worth taking good care of myself. I value myself enough to know that I deserve the best. So share that with you in the hopes that this helps you. And thank you.